A pack of lies. I planned on recording this, actually making a video for it prior to the election. And now it's the last minute, so to speak. It's the day before. So I thought, it's too late. Why bother? But I have to do it just on principle. To say it was done prior to the election. Maybe it affects one vote, but it just needs to be done. I just received an Instagram from a friend that rarely messages me, who's a leftist, with a Kamala Harris skit from SNL, which I didn't watch. And I wonder, he's older, wise, presumably. So I don't categorize him in the context of somebody who would be taunting me, because he knows I'm a very big Trump supporter, because that would be so childish. Or maybe at that age, from his perspective, it's not childish, because maybe the entire election cycle is beneath him, and he would see those of us that see it as a very big deal as childish. And so maybe he means it in a lighthearted manner. I don't know. But I resisted the temptation to send something back that's equally combative, because maybe he doesn't see it as combative. Or even if he does, why should I feed into it? So anyway, I say that to say, I'm amazed that there are people that could actually have an opposing view. But then even as I say that, I think to myself, well, that's always going to be the case. It always has been the case. Except in this particular instance, when you have somebody who wasn't elected through the proper nomination process, who was a substitute, who's last minute, who's exceptionally unqualified, I'm stunned that it isn't just a complete 90-10. And tomorrow, maybe it will be, in fact, a landslide. But I would need it to be a landslide that's both electoral and popular. Because otherwise, I guess many people just lockstep into whomever is in charge of the side that they're assigned to in their mind of capital D. So let me now do the actual recording of what the point of it was. A pack of lies. My intention is to go through all of the things that people have said about Donald Trump and point out that they are all lies. He's been maligned the entire time in such a way as to almost be a parody. It's almost comical that anyone could believe the things that are said about him. You wonder, are you just saying that because it's what needs to be said to sort of muddy the water? Or are you really stupid? Or I guess maybe brainwashed? This is a man approaching 80, about whom people will refer to things that happened when he was in his 20s and he wasn't in charge under the Nixon administration. You have to you have to imagine how filled with Trump derangement syndrome you have to be to discuss someone's viability for the presidency by going back 60 years. They'd actually gone back before his existence, if you can believe that, to find fault. He shouldn't be president because of something that happened prior to his birth. I'm not joking. Think about the level of absurdity to assess someone before they existed on the planet, to assess someone's competency, qualification, suitability for a job by assessing something that happened prior to their existence, prior to their birth. And in fact, prior to even their father's adulthood. They have gone into his father's teenage years and pulled up a list of names that were said to have been present at a Klan rally in New York when this 80-year-old's father was 19 years old. That he was apparently a bystander and noted in police records as having been part of the roundup, allowing people to wonder if perhaps his father, when he was 19, was participating in the Klan rally. The fact that something like that is even brought up when the present past, the recent past, current events of his opponent, who enslaved inmates by keeping them past their release date, who put a woman in prison whose child had sickle cell and couldn't make it to school and was cleared not to go to school because she invented this new truancy law that imprisons parents. That she incarcerated thousands of people for marijuana, then bragged about smoking it herself. That happened now in the present, recent years, not 60 years ago, not 80, 90, 100 years ago. This is her career that she relies upon as part of her resume of being Attorney General. So line number one, I would say, is the idea that Trump's father's 19-year-old presence around a Klan rally in New York has any relevance to Trump and his suitability for president. There's the first lie. Then there's the second lie, that he's always been a racist. That's based upon when he was in his 20s and his control of his father's company was transitioning to him, and it wasn't completely in his hands. And he was, did I mention, in his 20s, that there was a prior existing policy that preceded his adulthood, his existence as an adult, that was challenged by the Nixon administration as being discriminatory, about which no guilt was ever found, that Trump organization settled on. That's what they're holding out to say, that he's racist? A policy that was accused, that existed prior to his existence as an adult and control of the company, regarding which the company settled. This is in the 70s. It's 2024. It'll be 2025 in a few weeks. And this is something from the 70s when he was in his 20s. Prior to that, it was regarding something that happened before his existence on the planet. That's also part of the lies. Pack of lies, lie number two, that he's a racist because his father's company settled an accusation that they never admitted guilt on from the Nixon administration in the 70s when Trump was in his 20s. Number three, that he's a failed businessman, that he filed bankruptcy 6 times. Trump has never filed bankruptcy, not once. His company, the Trump Organization, has never filed bankruptcy, not once. There are businesses that his company acquired, casinos, and those businesses went bankrupt as part of every other business that went bankrupt at that time during the washout of the casino scene in New Jersey, that banks were loaning left and right to everybody that flooded the market. That's one of many enterprises that went belly up. And there are many, many more, because that's what entrepreneurs do. They try different things, and some things work and some things don't. The parent company that's trying these things has never once filed for bankruptcy. In fact, his comeback, the art of the comeback, was precisely about the fact that he was $900 million in debt and had signed personally and still found a way to avoid filing bankruptcy personally or for his top corporation. So that's a lie. That's part of the pack of lies that he's filed bankruptcy 6 times. He's never filed bankruptcy 1 time. People sometimes will say, oh, if he had taken the money his dad gave him and put it in the stock market, he'd have made more money than he has now. That would seem to make sense to those that only look at things as money. Trump and many others look at money as a scorecard, but it's indicative of having accomplished things other than just letting money grow for its own sake. It's like changing the skyline of the city, like building connections, helping people, improving the quality of life as he did with the skating rink, etc., and so forth. It's moving into life and accomplishing things. It's not just sitting at home while your money goes up in the stock market. And that's the way that many people that don't have money, I think, look at people that have money as all they want is more money. Because that's all they can imagine. They can't imagine, I think, that there's a lot of life to be lived and connections to make when you are that wealthy. Elon Musk has helped to clarify that, because Elon Musk is not a person who just goes from yacht to yacht and house to house to just sit around. And he's endorsed Trump because they are like-minded. So that's another part of the pack of lies. That he's filed bankruptcy 6 times. He's never filed bankruptcy 1 time, nor has a Trump organization ever filed bankruptcy. But those are all part of the ancient history category of things. He's always been a racist. He's a failed businessman. His father was part of the Klan. This is from ages ago. And if you wanted to go back ages ago, when he was running against Biden, people might point out that Biden had to withdraw the first time he ran for the presidency for plagiarism, which is the same thing that Kamala was already just recently discovered to have been guilty of herself, plagiarism, which tells you a lot about the style of that mindset. Copy and paste other people's ideas. But let's just stick to Trump and the pack of lies. Those are the ancient ones. Look, going back in time. And going back in time, they don't think about being on stage with Rosa Parks. They don't think about his alliance with and support of Mike Tyson. They don't think about his support of Jennifer Hudson. They don't think about his friendships with Russell Simmons and Oprah and Whoopi Goldberg and having dated black women and anything. Because if you mention he dated black women, people say, well, those masters would have sex with their slaves, as if that has anything to do with the price of tea in China. So there's a way to paint him as a racist no matter what he does. If he dates black women, then he's probably fetishizing them. If he doesn't date black women, then he's a racist that doesn't like black women. There's just no way around that. If you want to paint him as a racist, you're going to see it that way regardless of the facts, no matter how far back you have to go. Now let's come down to the recent present, right? Actually, let's go back a bit before he announces for president, because they keep bringing things up from the past, like that sexual assault thing by the lady that says she, has all these details she can't remember. The corroborating evidence is all janky and ridiculous, and yet she wins anyway in a stacked deck type trial. But if you go back, one of the things that was infamously supposed to derail his candidacy last time that he won was when he said that he grabs women by the pussy. He never said that he grabs women by the pussy. Never said it. Never said that he did it. So, and no one ever said that he did it. Even the woman that accused him of sexual assault said that she wasn't raped per se, and that she wasn't sure exactly what happened. Even she didn't say he grabbed my pussy. There is one woman who did say explicitly that she was grabbed, literally grabbed, fingered, digitally penetrated in the pussy by the president. And that was Tara Reade, who said that that was done to her by President Biden. And of course, we have the confirmed instance of Bill Clinton using Monica Lewinsky's pussy as a humidor and putting his cigar in her vagina. That's confirmed. That we know. We know Clinton did it. And Tara Reade is hiding in Russia, afraid of being killed by Biden. and she claims he did it. What Trump said when he was not president, in private, on a hot mic, to someone in the Bush family, was that when you are wealthy, women will consent to just about anything. They will let you do just about anything. That he just kisses women now. He said to the guy, you can do anything and they'll allow it. Grab them by the pussy. He's telling him to grab them by the pussy because they will allow it. Telling somebody else that when you're rich, women will allow you to grab them is not the same thing as saying that you do it or have done it, or that you do it or have done it non-consensually, which is the implication of making the allegation that he grabs women by the pussy. The implication is that he goes around doing it without consent, when in fact, he didn't even say he ever did it at all, with or without consent. He told somebody else they can do it to other women with their consent because they're now wealthy. Basically saying, in private, that women are gold diggers when you are wealthy. They'll come out of the woodwork. Where's the lie? The lie, as part of the pack of lies, is that he ever said he grabs women by the pussy. There's that lie. Now, we can get past all of those stupid, bullshit, irrelevant lies. By the way, if all those things were true, if his father was in the Klan, if in his 20s he was the one that pioneered the not renting to minorities, if it was true that he sexually assaulted this woman, if it's true that he grabbed women by the pussy, if it was true that he was a racist that never liked black people and said so, if all those things were true, it still wouldn't have anything to do with fracking or foreign policy or immigration or inflation or taxes or energy policy or crime or the First Step Act or opportunity zones or space or a dome to protect from incoming missiles, or making America healthy again by getting pesticides out of the food, or anything else that is critically important to the future of the country. Even if his father was at a Klan rally when his father was 19, even if he sexually assaulted a woman 25 years ago, even if when he was 22 years old, he was a racist that didn't want to rent to black people, none of that would have anything to do with anything. He would still be the better choice. By the way, if those things were true and they are not, as I've explained, you would at least have to compare it to the other person that he was running against at the time, Joe Biden, who was quoted as saying he didn't want his children in a racial jungle. As the person he's running against now, Kamala Harris, said about Joe Biden, he supported segregationists. That's what she said. Of course, she did things far worse, like enslave people, by keeping them past the end of their term, and destroy people's lives, and then brag about the kind of power that she wielded, talking about how, with a stroke of her pen, she can destroy your life and then drop charges a couple weeks later just because. Even if all the things they say about Trump were true and they're not, he'd still be the better choice by miles. On top of which you have his presidency to compare it against to see the results he achieved, which were best economy in generations, lowest inflation in generations, energy independence, no new wars, etc., etc., etc. The vaccine that the Washington Post gave him Pinocchios for claiming he'd be able to develop in less than 5 years, that he nonetheless did. The vaccine that Kamala said, I wouldn't trust it if Trump took it. And then immediately when they took power, they condemned all of us for not wanting to take it. Even if every single lie was true, he'd be the better choice by miles. and the other person's inherent evil would be obvious. Trump has never evinced any kind of evil. He's never shown any tendency towards being a horrible, evil person like these people have. Ever. He is retaliatory. When you attack him first, he'll defend himself. That's not the same as people that just want to control other people because they are sick in the head. So let's go back to the pack of lies. All of this is prior to him even announcing coming down the escalator. This is how far back people go. They go backwards in time to try to dig things up. So what have we established so far? Whether his father was or wasn't at a Klan rally when his father was 19 is irrelevant to anything. The Nixon administration settlement happened when Trump wasn't in control of that policy and hadn't come up with the policy and was in his 20s anyway, and no guilt was even admitted to. His entire life, he's the most mentioned name in hip-hop. There's been no evidence of him being a racist. And the thing about Nixon and his father's company is not proof of that, even if it had been his company, which it wasn't. There is no proof of him being a racist. The other thing people will bring up is the Central Park Five. That has nothing to do with being a racist. He didn't say anything racial. What he said was, and he took an ad out, he was anti-crime. And he would have taken the same ad out if those young men were Asian. That isn't the point. The point was he was anti-crime then, and he's anti-crime now. Let me explain why that's not racist. First of all, his motivation for being opposed to them and saying that we should give the death penalty to those that admit to raping women had nothing to do with their race, which is sort of relevant when you accuse somebody of racism. And by the way, just insofar as saying that at all and their guilt, they had admitted it. They had confessed at the time that he took out that ad. He didn't take out that ad at the time that he understood that there was a question as to their guilt to interject himself. He took out the ad, not about their guilt or innocence, but about the idea that we should punish people to the extreme to get crime under control because it was so out of control. Their guilt or innocence was not in question at that time, first of all, and second of all, the race was entirely irrelevant to the subject anyway. Incidentally, after they were exonerated of the rape, there are still those that say they were nonetheless still guilty of many crimes that led to the rape. There is still much evidence that they beat her up and left her to be raped by someone else. So it's not making them into angels. It's not as if they weren't there and nothing happened at all, by the way. But that's irrelevant anyway because he wasn't asserting the death penalty for them beating her up. He was asserting the death penalty for people that he had understood and had stated that they admitted that they did it. And regardless, it was irrelevant to race. Okay, now we can come back to the recent past, present in broad terms, when he comes down the escalator. I assumed everybody would be thrilled. My whole life I've talked to people that said, oh, if Trump ran, Oprah was, asked him that years ago when they were friends. Oh, if Trump ran, this would be fantastic, because he would be nonpartisan. He would unite the country. Remember, he was a Democrat first. Then he was an independent when he went into the Reform Party. And he left when Pat Buchanan showed up because when David Duke showed up, because he didn't want to be associated with racists. Only becoming a Republican when the parties moved and switched, like Bill Maher said. The Democrats have now gone woke. They're not really liberal, and as Trump has been saying, it's really the party of common sense, as Elon Musk has also been saying. It's a party that wants safe cities, a secure border, good energy policy, and lower taxes. That's not really radical or bizarre or has anything to do with race. He comes down the escalator and he puts on the table a subject that people now may forget was not a hot topic, which is now the main topic of this election: immigration. The economy as well, but the economy is always a top issue, or often is, and has been many times in the past. But immigration was something he brought up, specifically illegal immigration. And he stated accurately that when people come into the country illegally, and by illegally, we're not talking about people that fly in on student visas and overstay their visa, okay? That's not coming in illegally, that's coming in legally and then letting your legal status lapse. So this isn't the same thing. We're talking about coming in illegally in the first place. And specifically, obviously, coming across the southern border, walking across the southern border. It's obvious what he's talking about for people to try to conflate migrants and illegal immigrants and lapsed visas and all of this. He's talking about low income, low education people coming from Central and South America, and now it's become all over the world, through the southern border. And he's referring to those people when he says they are not sending their best, their brightest. They're sending people with lots of problems. They're murderers, they're rapists, etc., etc. Now, there are studies later that show women that come through Mexico are being raped in large numbers. Well, who's raping them? The Scandinavians? The Italians? What nationality would the rapist in Mexico have to be by definition? This bizarre conflation that he said all Mexicans are rapists is astonishing. And apparently didn't even come out at the time. It came out hours, days, or weeks afterwards when they decided to go back and pick it apart. When someone is referring to people as rapists, he's obviously referring to the rapists as rapists, not the non-rapists, right? He didn't say all Mexicans are rapists. That's not even something anyone believes that anybody believes. Nobody believes that Trump believes all Mexicans are rapists. Nobody thinks that he thinks that. Nobody thinks he was trying to convey that. Nobody thinks he was dog whistling that. That's just stuff you make up afterwards. Obviously, when he says they're rapists and murderers, he's referring to those people that are rapists and murderers. That subsection that are rapists and murderers. And the fact that they are included in the number is the problem. And he even went so far as to say many, I'm sure, are good people as well. But the point is, that needs to not happen. We have to get control over our border. People can't be coming in illegally. That's what he said. That's what he meant. That's obvious. There's another lie that he said all Mexicans are rapists. Never said it. Never meant it. Never indicated it. Never implied it. Never inferred it. The lie is that he did. That's the lie. That's the problem. Let's move forwards. Another lie is that this is just during campaigning. But while he was campaigning, that he mocked a disabled reporter. Now, that's very easy because you can look at it and see the gestures and gesticulations he made with his hand in that statement are the same ones he uses and has used for years to refer to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about, including himself on Larry King Live interview where he talked about how he would be terrible at, I think, hunting. And he threw his arms around like, I wouldn't know what I was doing. He's done it over and over and over and over again in years prior. It is the gesture he uses. Secondly, how would anybody in that arena know who he was referring to in order for it to be a mockery that would land? No one ever heard of this reporter. Certainly they didn't know that he was disabled in that way specifically. It wouldn't even make any sense to make fun of someone's disability that you know that the audience doesn't recognize. It doesn't make even any sense in the allegation itself. But his use of those gestures to make fun of himself and all people who don't know what they're talking about when they're trying to make something up at the last moment or make themselves seem competent when they're not, is foolproof evidence that he was not making fun of the man's disability. And again, in making that false claim that he was doing so when he wasn't, the larger point is missed. What he was referring to is the fact that the reporter later, when he was confronted with the truth that he had in fact done a story that spoke about Muslims celebrating 9/11 on the roofs of New York, acted discombobulated because he was confronted with the fact that he did in fact refer to that which Trump was referring, that people claimed he was lying about. So the actual lie was the lie that Trump was lying about some Muslims celebrating on rooftops about 9/11. They lied about that. Why? Probably because they felt as if, well, you got to disparage all Muslims. This is the problem. They're so concerned and so afraid of racism and disparaging people that they lie in the other direction. That never happened. Then you find out that it did happen. Well, it was only a few people, so that it happened. So then the point is you're wrong. It doesn't matter if it was one person or 100 people. The point is it did happen. So don't say it didn't. And don't imply that Trump is implying that that's all Muslims. He didn't say that. Chris Rock, I believe, was the one that I was told said this, that put it well. If somebody killed 10 people, don't tell me they killed 11. Because then the subject switches to your mendacity, not their crime, their supposed crime. People lie about Trump with impunity because they feel like the ends justify the means, apparently. And they have to protect their holy cow, their sacred cow, of racism, 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 homophobia, misogyny, transphobia, xenophobia. Those are the worst things in the world to these idiots. Nothing else matters. It's all that matters. So, that was another lie. The lie that he mocked a disabled person. He never did. The lie that the person he was talking about said that there were no Muslims celebrating on 9/11. That was also a lie. It's a lie within that lie. The lie that he said all Mexicans are rapists. Never said any such thing. You fast forward to Charlottesville. He compliments leftists. He compliments people that believe that Confederate statues should be taken down. He compliments them. His opponents. This is a unity effort. And he says there are good people on both sides of this issue of taking statues down. There's good people that think we should take them down. And there are people that think that we should not take them down. There's good people on both sides of this issue. The fact that, and he was obviously in favor of keeping the statues up, but the fact that he would go so far as to try to be uniting and say, look, there's good people on both sides who just disagree. He's saying the far left that wants to take the statues down are good people. But instead of focusing on that, they try to assert that what he was referring to was Nazis that were marching, even though he specifically said, but I'm not talking about the white supremacists and Nazis who should be condemned entirely. Oh, he said that later. He didn't say it at the time. He said, it doesn't matter. That's what he meant. That's what he said out of his mouth. Whether he said it at the time, afterwards, before, the day after, who cares? Now you understand his intention because it's been clarified. When Biden clarifies, like his garbage comment, nobody minds that. Nobody says, well, yeah, we can. The clarification is irrelevant. Look what he said at the time. Now he explained what he meant. Okay, well, then Trump explained what he meant. Apply the same standard or don't. There's good people on both sides is an effort to include everyone. Just like he said with the illegal immigrants, and many, I'm sure, are good people. Even when he's condemning things, he includes the other side and tries to be inclusive. So there's a lie as well, the Charlottesville lie, which has been thoroughly debunked. Most recently, there was the lie that he said he wanted Liz Cheney put in front of a firing squad, which even Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks said is a lie. It's lie after lie after lie after lie about what he said, about what he meant. And obviously the biggest lie of all is that he was a Russian agent. You couldn't say his policies favor Russia. You could argue about his policies, but no, they say he's a Russian agent. They have the Steele dossier that he hired prostitutes to urinate on the bed that Obama slept in when he was in Moscow. Just outrageous, ridiculous lies. There's one that he raped a 13-year-old that always brings her case around the time of election and then pulls it afterwards. There's the lie that when he called Zelensky to look into the corruption that he suspected was going on with Biden and Ukraine, that he did something wrong with the president himself. Zelensky said he did nothing wrong, that they nonetheless impeached him on and failed. There's just lie after lie after lie after lie. Then there is the lie that he took White House documents that he wasn't entitled to, even though as a president, he's able to declassify everything with a wave of his hand. So they are by definition not classified because he's the president. Meanwhile, the other guy, Biden, who was running against at the time, did the same thing when he was vice president and didn't have the right to declassify it. The double standard is incredible, but there's a lie about his being a Russian agent. There's a lie about his call to Zelensky. There's a lie about his taking of documents that were classified when his taking of them, his mere taking of them inherently declassifies them because he's the president. He can do with them whatever he wants. Presumably because the system assumed that if you've elected somebody president, you implicitly trust them because that's why they're the president, for God's sakes. There's the lie that he did nothing about George Floyd, even though he passed an executive order disallowing the use of the chokehold by police officers unless their life's in danger. It's a direct response to that. Nobody even remembers that because they instead lie and say he didn't do anything about that, when in fact he did. There's lie after lie after lie after lie about this man. That is a billionaire and decided to do what he could to, and continues to want to do what he can, to improve the quality of the country. And if you say, oh, he's a show-off and a braggart, I would say, where's the problem? A show-off that wants to lead the team in order to be able to have the team win so he can take credit for it, that can do so competently and did so as he proved with the lowest inflation numbers, best employment numbers, energy independence numbers, no new wars numbers, vaccine numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. More people died under Biden from COVID than Trump, by the way, even though Biden was handed the vaccine and Trump didn't even have the vaccine till halfway. When somebody wants to lead the team in order to show off and say how well they did, I'm perfectly fine with that because that means we're all going to win. He wants the country to win. You think he wants to be president for the country to fail? That's the kind of bullshit that people talk about. He wants to lead the country, steal all the money, and he doesn't care if the country falls apart. I have to assume that you don't even believe that yourself when you say something that stupid. Now you could say, I believe he'll try to make the country better and he'll fail. Fine, you can disagree about his policies, and like Obama said, all of his successes were due to Obama. And now Clinton said all the successes that are upcoming will be due to Biden. You can argue about that round and around. But the idea that he wants the country to fail is idiotic. The idea that he's incompetent and will make the country fail is disproven by the fact that he was already president and the country did very, very well. But the most offensive part is the pack of lies. To just make up lie after lie after lie. Most of the lies regarding Trump are the fact that people accuse him of lying. That's the most egregious. That his haters see him as a compulsive liar that lies about everything. That they don't distinguish between puffery and lying. Oh, this is the best thing ever. It's not a lie. It's just bragging language. It's like something no one's ever seen before. Well, someone did see it once in January 1945, so he lied. You know, it's absurd, and it's become really comedic, the level to which they'll go to label him a liar, but they won't label anybody else a liar. They'll just say, well, he clarified his statements. Well, they misspoke. But if he says it was sunny on Monday, they'll say, well, it was actually a cloud at 3 p.m. You're lying again. And that is the biggest problem we have. That the impulse to authoritarianism that the system has and uses and has evidenced against Trump is the bigger problem. One man, whether he's an authoritarian or not, whether he admires dictators or not, whether he quotes Hitler or not, is not the problem. The problem is, and those things aren't an issue anyway, but even if they were, that isn't the problem. The problem is when you have a deep state, a system of people that have already established themselves to have gone after their political enemies, put people in prison. Steve Bannon just got out last week. The IRS has been weaponized. OSHA has been weaponized. Elon Musk has been sued by every department of the government. California authorities have stated openly, we want to stop Elon Musk because he supports Trump. That's the problem. The system is the problem. The system is what we're voting against tomorrow. The deep state is a multi-armed octopus. That's the problem, not Trump one way or the other, even if you thought he was Hitler, which he's not. This is a man that will unify the country finally. And maybe then the fake news, he coined that phrase, will have their back broken, and Cuomo will come out smelling like a rose in having changed his ways and now seems to be trying to be the voice of the middle, to be the honest broker that pushes hard against both sides, which used to be what we liked. If you feel like the Trumpers are too Trumpy and too partisan, it's because you pushed us here with your bullshit by being too anti-Trump. Whoopi Goldberg said they're trying to humanize him. Don't let them do that. Implying what? He's not a human? He shouldn't be looked upon as a human being? That's the corner you've moved yourself into that causes the rest of us to have to react to your bullshit. And then you judge our reaction. The opposition to Donald John Trump has been a pack of lies. And tomorrow, I'm recording this the day before, there will be a landslide victory for Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States. And we will hopefully go into another golden era that will realign politics and get rid of all the waste and allow us to focus on common sense and allow us to see that the robots that speak that political crap, as Joe Rogan put it, is over. And the age of human beings, with all of their frailties and foibles, has begun. And the era of robotic hacks like Obama and Kamala, hopefully, is over.